Alright, so today I'm going to be taking off the bowl on my Berkeley 12JC Jet Drive. And when I went to refill the bowl oil through my fill holes here, all the oil just came out the intake of the jet. So I'm thinking that the bowl seal inside of here is bad. So I've bought a new bowl seal from Berkeley Jet. And I have the overhaul and service manual here, which I found online and printed out. It's a little sparse on information, but it does have a section on removing the bowl and checking on that seal. So I'm going to try to follow along with this. This is the first time that I've really worked on the interior of this unit, and this is the first jet drive I've ever owned. So I am not an expert on this. I'm going to try to do my best to go slow, go careful, but it's possible I'll screw something up along the way. So first up, I'm supposed to remove the transom housing, so this entire unit. And I'm also supposed to remove the reverse gate cable and the steering cable. So I'm going to try to carefully get these cables apart. Hopefully I can get them back on in the correct place so that there's not a lot of extra adjustment to do. And then we'll go ahead and get the rest of this off. So this has a little safety or retaining clip. I have to pop that off so we can move these nuts. Try not to lose this. Then I'm just going to loosen up this bottom stopper for the reversing gate cable. So now the reversing gate's disconnected. This cable is still attached here. Might need to get this out of this steering arm so that I can get the whole bowl free here. I think I'm going to need a bigger box wrench for that. I'm not actually quite sure how this is supposed to come out. Might be easier to just remove this entire piece here. First off, I'm going to take the steering cable apart. I'm going to really rely on this video myself to try and remember how to get all this stuff back together again. Okay, again, I'm attempting to not lose any of my fasteners. It's a windy day. I'm setting everything on my manual off to the side here, so hopefully it doesn't just blow away. So there's kind of a set screw in this steering arm. I'm going to pop that out, and then I think this whole arm will pop up out of the steering piston here, and it'll keep the reversing rod with it. And that's about a 3/8 on that little set bolt. It's just a little square head here. Okay, that little arm is free. So when I take the bowl off, this cable is still going to be going through here. So I guess ideally the cable would be small enough to just slide through this hole freely, but I don't really know how that's going to work because this is all connected and I don't really understand how this is put together. It's really vague in the manual. It just says remove this stuff. They don't really give you any details. They just say take it apart. Yeah, okay. Okay, I have no idea how to get this apart without ripping this little boot, which I don't want to do. Maybe when I take the bowl off, I'll see if I can just set it on some milk crates and hopefully not have to completely clear this assembly here. Alright, so next up I need to take all of these screws out, get the transom housing off of here, and there should be a gasket inside this, so I'm going to try not to rip that. And the manual says that a lot of people use a lot of silicone in here too, so there might have to be some prying going on. Each of these screws has a nut on the back side inside the hull, so fortunately I can just reach over the transom and put a wrench on those. These bottom ones, I might not be able to do that. We'll see what I can do with that. There's one out. These are pretty rusty. Alright, for some of the more obnoxious nuts, I'm using a super long reach extension on a ratchet. I don't need it to be quite this long, but this is the only one I have. So I can get in there to that nut, and then I can hold the bolt with my flathead screwdriver on the outside. And just loosen that up. This is another very, very rusty one. And this is a jet in a boat that, as far as I know, has only ever been used in freshwater. So I'm lucky. If this had been a saltwater boat, this would probably be even rustier. I may have to replace these with new hardware when I put this back together. These fasteners down at the bottom of the transom housing are actually big wood screws because there's no access in this lower part to get a nut in from the inside. So these are just screwed into the transom of the boat. This one's pretty stuck, so I'm going to have to cheat a little bit to get some extra leverage. I've cheated my screwdriver right out of the handle. Good thing this is an old screwdriver that I don't care about. Let's try that again. This bolt is really stuck. That one's actually a little bent. Alright, so now my transom housing should be completely separate from the boat, aside from some silicone in the gasket. So I'm going to carefully pry around the periphery of this, try to pop that transom housing off. I am going to try to loosen this up a little bit. Maybe if I take this nut off, then the whole thing can slide in. This nut is 1.25 inches, which happens to be the biggest wrench I've got. I'm lucky I have this. I guess I could have used an adjustable wrench, but it's nice to have one of these to get a little more leverage without it slipping. There's some kind of a crumbly O-ring or packing material in here. Probably have to replace that. I'm going to just try and pull this gasket O-ring thing out of here. It's pretty rough shape, so I'll just try to find a new one of those. Alright, so that's free. This is essentially free. I may or may not need to get the transom housing all the way off. We'll see if I can just get things loose enough to actually get to the bowl. Alright, I'm running a putty knife all the way around between the gasket and the hull. I'm hoping I'm not ruining that gasket, but I just need to cut out or get out some of that silicone so this will break free. I'm putting so much force on this to try to pry it off that I'm actually fracturing the gel coat a little bit, which I don't really want to do. The manual says use a pry bar, putty knife, or a large screwdriver, so that's what I'm doing. Kind of using all three at this point. Alright, Well, that's finally loose. That was terrible. And I destroyed my home port lettering here. I can print that again, so not the end of the world, but definitely don't want to ever maintain anything with this ever again because it's so hard to get into. Alright, so we've gotten the transom mount loose. Going to see about getting that back here a little bit. It's possible I don't have to actually take this all the way off because I think I can at least now reach the bolts that hold the bowl on, so I can take those off and then kind of pull the entire bowl off of here, theoretically, with the rudder skeg, with the reversing gate, with all this stuff, rest it on some milk crates, do what I need to do with that bowl seal, and then put everything back on. Now I've got some fiberglass loss here from trying to pull that seal off. Definitely going to have to get new silicone and everything. So it seems theoretically possible that I could have gotten to these bolts from inside the boat without taking this whole cover off, but I'm not 100% sure about that, so probably good that I followed the instructions. They are still a pain to get to, even with this transom adapter halfway off. Alright, there's one out. So these are the bowl to suction piece cap screws, and there's 8 of these guys. Alright, there's number 2 of 8. That's only taken 20 minutes. Alright, that should be the last of the bowl cap screws. So, theoretically, the bowl should now be loose. That's a good theory. Oh, yeah. All kinds of good ooze in there. That's filthy. Alright, so here's a closer look at the inside of my jet. Noticing on the drive shaft there's some little grooves. I don't know if those are supposed to be there or not. I kind of suspect not, but I might have to find out more about that. And it seems like there's some dings or wear to these fins. I'm not sure what that's about. And then this is that seal that I think I need to replace. So I'm going to see if I can pry that out and then get the new one in. Alright, so I'm looking a little more closely at my existing bowl seal, and I think I've solved a couple mysteries here. So, this bowl seal, the existing one that's in here, is installed with the back facing out. According to the video, you're supposed to install them with this side facing out, where you can see the little spring visible. So this one that's in here, the last person that worked on this installed that seal backwards. And that's why there's no oil in here. So the lubrication oil won't stay inside, and that is why my drive shaft looks like this with these big grooves worn in it, because there's no lubrication in there, and so these have just been sitting there and grinding away on the bearings. Alright, so I should, if I was doing this absolutely correctly, I should take the rest of the jet apart and replace this drive shaft. But that is a lot more work than I'm willing to do right now. I don't have a drive shaft. I don't have the tools that I need to get the drive shaft out or get all the pieces back in. And so I'm going to do it wrong and ignore this for now. I'm just going to go ahead and replace that bowl seal. Hopefully it will make a seal around this worn out drive shaft and hold some lubrication in there so this at least won't get worse. Well, at least that's the theory. It's possible this is just so worn that it won't make a seal at all, even with that new piece. But we're going to try it. I'm going to go ahead and take the old seal out, put the new seal in, reassemble all this, refill the bowl oil reservoir, and run it for the rest of September. And then next year, I'll probably pull all this apart and redo it hopefully more correctly. I might need somebody that knows more about jet drives to actually help me with that. Alright, let's take the old bowl seal out. I've made my screwdriver into an O-ring puller because it's already busted, so don't care. Alright, that is out of there. Actually, this old one doesn't even look like the new one. There's no cavity with a spring on either side, so I don't know if this is an older part that was just never replaced or if this is something completely different that's not made for this application. Who knows what got put in there. I'm going to clean things out a little bit. There's a nice mixture of oil and water and everything here. Alright, I'm installing the new bowl seal. The official word is you need a special tool to punch this in, but some guys on the internet said you can just put it in there, so I'm going to go with the guys on the internet. It would actually help to have something to push that into place. Fortunately, I've got some oversized sockets that I can use as hammer tools. Okay, those are not very easy to use, so maybe I should have spent $30 for the special tool to punch this into place. Okay, that is in. So, yes, technically you can punch in your bowl seal with a big socket and a hammer, but I recommend against it. This is a pain in the ass. Spend the $30, get the real tool from Berkeley, and do it correctly. So I can't tell if this bowl is supposed to have bearings in there or just bushings. On the disassembly video it shows bushings, which look like what I've got. On the parts list it shows a bearing, and I can order a bearing, but I'm not 100% sure if I'm supposed to have one in there or not. I'm going to go ahead and just reassemble this as is with that messed up drive shaft because I don't have $300 for a new drive shaft at the moment. I also don't have time to wait for one to ship, and I don't have the parts and tools I need to pull the old shaft out and put a new one in. I'm just going to leave these bushings the way they are as well, and I'm going to hope that that new and more correct bowl seal will keep the oil in place and keep things from wearing as fast back in there. So now it's time to reassemble everything, and again I'd like to stress that I'm not doing this precisely correct. If I was doing this correctly, I'd be replacing this worn out shaft, I would be replacing these bearings or bushings, and I'd probably be replacing some gaskets and seals on this unit. I'm just going to go ahead and put everything back that I have. I'm going to order some of the new parts, and maybe next year I will be able to take these out and redo it again more correctly. Again, I've just been focusing mainly on this bowl seal in this video. This is the one thing that I bought, the one thing that I wanted to replace, and this is the only part that I currently have to reassemble this with. So one of the other reasons that I'm reassembling this now is that I need some more specialty tools to get these bushings in and out, to get some of the other pieces replaced, and that specialty tool kit is on back order from the manufacturer. So I could order the tools, I'd have to leave all this stuff sitting out like this. I don't really want to leave it just sitting forever. I want to reassemble everything while I remember where it goes. And I think I could run the jet a couple more times for a couple short trips with this drive shaft the way it is. It's obviously been running like this for several years, and it's pretty much already ruined, so I'm not worried too much about ruining the drive shaft. I might ruin some other pieces, but if I'm rebuilding all this more correctly next year, I'm going to have to order a complete rebuild kit anyway. So, that being said, let's go ahead and reassemble it, and hopefully everything goes back the way it came out. Alright, so I've got the O-ring back around my bowl, got my gasket in place. I'll go ahead and reseat the bowl, try to line those bolt holes up and start getting those bolts back in. It's a little fiddly to get these bolt holes in the right places. Alright, we've got all 8 of those bolts back in. So next up we want the transom adapter installed. And I'm going to reuse the old gasket. It's a little rough, but it's not completely ripped through. I'm not going to put much silicone in here because I'm just going to tear this all apart again and do it next year. So I don't want to have to fight silicone like I did this time. I am, however, going to be replacing these disgusting old bolts with some nicer ones. I need to make sure to get the steering arm and the reversing cable back through the correct holes. This is a case where a little more silicone might have actually helped to hold that gasket in place while I get the transom piece on there. I'm trying to have to right now I'm kind of juggling 6 things with the gasket, the plate, and bolts, and everything else. Still having trouble getting this bottom part to go in flush. I don't know if it's stuck on something or what. It just does not want to go in there. I don't know what this thing's problem is. It will not go flush at the bottom. I'm going to have to pull it off and start over. This just does not want to seat at the bottom. Alright, I still can't get the bottom of this to seat, so I'm just going to force it. I'm just going to get some longer bolts and bolt it till it goes on there and just force it past whatever's blocking it, because I can't find anything actually blocking it. So I'm currently seating the bottom of the transom housing the wrong way because I don't know what the right way is. I've got some longer bolts through here and I'm just forcing it into place, essentially, just tightening down the bolt until it's on there. And I don't really know what that's doing anywhere else. I might be screwing up the gasket seal in here that keeps water out from between the bowl and the transom housing, but I don't have any other way to get this tightened in. I've tried wiggling it, I've tried unmounting it, I've tried putting this in first, I've tried putting the top in first. There doesn't seem to be any way to get this flush without just over tightening some bolts. This is quickly going from a how-to video to a how-don't-to video because there's probably a better way to do this, and I recommend, I don't know, figuring out the better way to do it and letting me know, because I can't find any other videos about it. Alright, I've got the transom adapter back on, I think. So now we need to hook up steering and reverse to the jet nozzle again. So that should be just the opposite of what we did to take them off. It's never actually that simple, but we'll give it a shot here. I said I was going to get a new washer O-ring for this. I really should, but since I'm going to replace half of this anyway, I'm not going to bother with this now. I'm just going to jam the old one back in there. I don't remember how far out this threaded part was to start with, so I'm going to have to go back and look at my old videos just to see where that sat. As I'm reassembling this, I'm pretty sure there's supposed to be a little key that fits in this slot and then goes into this piece. That has definitely fallen out on the ground somewhere. So when you're doing this yourself, try not to lose that little key thing. If you do lose it, it looks like this. Fortunately, I was able to find it pretty quickly. So that is the piece that holds your steering together right here. So we need to drop this into the steering arm there. And then this can go onto this central shaft. Really easy to lose this little key piece while you're trying to juggle all these pieces. So once that set screw hole is lined up with the hole on the interior shaft, you can put the set screw in. And I reattach the nut for steering. There's only one that's that size, so that goes on there. And then we want to reattach our reversing cup here. That's a little fiddly. On mine, I think I actually want to adjust it maybe a little bit longer while I'm at it here. So on mine, when it's when the throttle's fully open, my reversing cup actually hangs down a little bit in the flow. So I think that's incorrect. So I'm going to make this so it's a little bit longer when the throttle's forward, so that this opens all the way up. This other little piece goes on the bottom. It's got an extension so that it's not getting caught in the little fork here. So we get that on there, and then we've got our little keeper clippy thing that keeps those nuts from backing off at all. At least that's the theory. So again, there's the reverser cup control linkage assembly. It's got that top nut that's kind of locked in place between the forks, that little bottom extension nut, and then that wire clip that holds those two together. Alright, so at this point everything should be back together. I should have steering again, and I should have reverse again. So I can't actually see any of that from the steering wheel, so I'm going to have to look back at my video and make sure all those functions work. Alright, so we've spent all day taking this thing apart, taking that old bowl seal out, putting the new bowl seal in. Alright, it's actually coming out of the other check hole. So we have a seal in our bowl. It's holding oil. It might not ruin that drive shaft as quickly as it was before. So that is a tiny bit of progress on the boat. I can check one more thing off the to-do list. Alright, I hope this video has been helpful to some people. I know it'll help me next year when I go to replace that pump shaft and remember just how much of a pain getting some of these parts out is. That's all for now. Check out my other videos if you want to see more on this boat, and see you next time.